know. I like this area
Mm-hmm.
the best. This is like a garden type of deal.
Nice.
But I thought it was interesting how it's been a long time since I played with Legos, like for myself and not like with other kids telling me what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, because how little kids do that.
Yeah.
But lots of like revision in what I wanted things to go, which kind of surprised me, which was cool.
Revision?
Yeah, like I
Surprised you
changed
from
it
this,
a
yeah.
lot from like I would have a thought and then do it and then have a different thought and change it and put pieces somewhere else, kind of thing. Which was cool.
Nice.
I really like the little eye. I always did, but I really like the little eye pieces. Those are, and this guy, he swivels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then, I mean, this obviously spins.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. You have, by the way, and I'm actually video recording this because
Okay.
it's just fun. Full disclosure. You're encountering different things, like, for example, charcoal.
Yes.
You know, that conversation.
Yeah.
There are these ambitions you have with photography and disability identity.
Yeah.
And then there's this PACE program. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Is any of the organization of that in your life represented here? And if so, what way?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I was thinking of those things specifically, which I guess I could have. I guess maybe like if the garden is the like end product type of thing, or like where we're trying to go back towards, because this kind of feels like a structure that was built like to me this represents like someone building a structure to get on top without creating a way for other people to get there. So like it kind of is almost like this person built it behind them and then didn't build really a way to get back up, like for other people, but there's a ladder here, but it's not touching the ground, so it's not easy access, but like a tall person could get up there. So I guess that's kind of like building society in a way, but setting up barriers for other people who might not be this exact person or people similar to this person. And then this is kind of like the ideal, so like the eyes are all looking at this area, and like this person's looking at this area, and so this is what everyone imagines life is like and kind of idealizes this, even if it's not true. Like this space doesn't have any green things except for this, and then this space, like all they have that is growing, like things that are growth in these, is like eyes. That's a human quality.
Gotcha.
And so, but yeah, like this is the space that everyone idealizes, but isn't necessarily true in all spaces. It doesn't exist in every space.
So this is an aspiration.
Yeah.
This a reality, or?
I would say a reality.
Okay.
And then this, I'm not sure. He's just a little animal guy. And I guess like could be people or things like trying to get to this space and like working towards this space, but it's not quite knowing how to get there because like he can't really move. He's kind of stuck there. It's not like he has wheels or like he can roll over here. But he's looking into this space and like wanting to be in this space, but with no access to that space still.
Okay. So there are a lot of questions, like if we were to build kind of a workshop.
Yeah.
All right. And the workshop has aspirations as a category of discussion.
Yeah.
Realities as a category of discussion. And present circumstances as a category of discussion. What area do you feel that you have a strength at facilitating a discussion for, let's say, a handful of students?
aspirations, realities, and current circumstances.
Yeah.
I would say maybe realities.
How so?
Because I feel like I'm in a lot of spaces that awareness of barriers and like negative realities of society at large are discussed a lot. And kind of not even discussed, but like further than that are being addressed and like confronted constantly. And so I feel like some people just aren't aware of like the nature of how ingrained those things are in society and just like of their existence at all. So I think I could open up like doors maybe to conversation that some people might not even know to think about.
What's one thing that just comes to your mind that's kind of intuitive, like, ooh, this is a barrier. It's not on the radar of most people.
Yeah, I mean, we're here in disability services. I think of disability and like, I think of how often I'm thinking of things just when I'm walking around of like ramp access and like different access, like physical access, and then in class of, oh, that's not very accessible, like what the teacher's doing right now to like a certain student like this. But I have to remind myself that people aren't thinking like that constantly, and they're not even thinking to think of those things. Like they don't have exposure to that world necessarily, so they don't even know that it's a barrier. So even just like lifting the veil and showing that that barrier exists, I think is something that I could do in that.
So you're lifting this veil.
Yeah.
Okay. Lifting the veil, it's kind of future forward. Okay. Once that veil is lifted, what sensation do you think that person or that group of people will experience once that veil is lifted and they become aware of those things that you just mentioned in terms of access?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the exposure that person has had to that before, because some people maybe have had exposure to that before but just haven't been willing to actually address it or look at it. So I think in that case the two reactions could be the same, like not choosing to question that barrier if they've already been exposed to it and haven't done anything or changed their mindset. So that's potential. Or like guilt at not seeing the barrier sooner, I think is also a potential reaction. Then I also think another reaction would be like questioning how that barrier got there, and what's being done to take that barrier down or what isn't being done, or things like that. So I think it's kind of like not really caring, like lack of sympathy or empathy for that. Guilt and shame maybe, or questioning and curiosity of surrounding that barrier and like positive growth from that. I think those are maybe the main three.
So the circumstances of the person's exposure
matters.
Influence and matters how they feel given exposure to certain things. Great. Then there are these other external things, circumstances of a person experience internal, how they feel. External to that, there are all these barriers, right? We pull back the curtain. Aha, there are the barriers, okay? So for the person who has circumstances where they are underexposed, what of these spaces represent the person's possible current state of unawareness, and then what's the aspiration? Look at all this again and see if we still have the same interpretation, or if your first interpretation was still valid.
I mean, I think based on the first interpretation, this could be that person's position, depending on their privilege and like other factors. Because I mean, to an extent, this person can't see all this stuff necessarily. So they're just kind of looking from the view that they have and not like realizing that this is reality potentially. So I think that could be. And then I also think this, but maybe like not looking at all this stuff, like looking in a different direction, because they're still stuck even if they don't know it. But they can't like see. They haven't seen the potential, which is like tearing this down. And they can't see this either. So they're not seeing the potential without this because they don't even see that this is here, and they're not looking for it either.
So you actually manipulated that with your hand. You turned it around. Okay. What would be the source, ideally, of that insight, that turning around? I mean, you actually physically did it, but in this world, ideally, how would that turning around insight awareness happen?
Turning that way or turning back this way?
So it's facing this way.
Yeah.
Turning this way to see, perceive.
I think it would have to be, I mean, the figure doesn't have ears, but you can't, like, there has to be some reaction over here that gets the attention.
Okay, so that's one thing. Something happens, an event. Okay.
Or something walks into their view.
Oh, something walks into their view?
Yeah, and like comes back this way. Cool. So they have again, like something happens where, like meeting them where they are kind of thing. I think that would be a potential way as well.
Okay, all right. Is there a third or a fourth?
You
can look at the environment, you can manipulate it, because my question was provoked by actually you moved things around.
I mean, if someone's coming, but see, also you can't really get down very easily. That's the problem.
What does that represent? You know, not being able to get down represents in this scenario we're talking about people, insight about disability. That's just one of the things that we're trying to uncover, pull the curtain behind. And just some people just can't get down. What is the not getting down?
I think part of it might be, I think it could go back to the shame thing, but also just like pride of just not wanting to admit things, especially if you've made strong claims in a certain way, or I don't know, been very blatantly ableist and offensive, and then kind of having to stand by that unless you are really willing to make a change in your life, because I mean, if they admit their wrongs, then that takes rebuilding, like going down and then rebuilding. But if they don't, they can stay up here even if it's like really unstable, because this is actually really unstable because it's only held up by this one thing. So like they can stay there, but it's still risky. But it's also a risk in a way to admit you're wrong and tear it down and have to rebuild again, even if what you rebuild is a lot more structurally sound and better for other people and yourself.
So all those things that you described about the circumstances of this person, they're stuck up here, they're not down. There's a folk over here that, you know, they're kind of stuck. Right? This one we physically, you know, turned it around. You talked about some event happening over here that pivots people to look in this direction. You talked about somebody entering the space here. We talked about these less than tangible things, internal fear, you know, pride, being called out wrong. Internal things. You talked about external events. Let's say this is the person with the disability. Using all those descriptions about what keeps them stuck up there, not able to get down, in terms of facing disability identity. Talk to me about what you perceive from this being the person with a disability, not being able to get down.
And their disability identity?
I'm shrugging by the way.
I think I mean, the thought to some extent here was like, this person could like come down here and jump down this way a little bit, but depending on their disability, they have to have physical access to that, and they might not because of that. I think being stuck up here, if they were willing to be empowered by their identity, then I think maybe I should have started without the flag, because if this maybe is a symbol of them like accepting their identity and embracing it and using it to like, be empowered, and then this could almost be kind of like wings. And then they don't need any of this because they can just fly down.
Okay.
So then none of these barriers don't impact, like they still impact them because they're still there and they still exist, but like they have a means to get around them to an extent, or like it's elevated their voice, because I mean, one, there's no other people here, but if there were other people here, they might not be able to fly, so like now this person can fly, so they have something that they can like hey, I can do this thing, and that elevates their position to an extent, and then they can like work on tearing these things down as well.
What do you know for a fact, as in terms of your experience?
We're good.
Cool. Your personal experience working here in this office.
Okay. In
what way? In an aspirational way, or in a reality? Hey, oh my goodness! I'm gonna check in with you. In what real or aspirational way can the students that receive services from this resource of the university fly? In what real or aspirational way? Because like Red Bull gives them wings.
In like what ways, or what helps them to do that? Yeah,
to fly. You know, you use words empowerment, fly, you know, being able to, even though these structural barriers are still there, that person flies. Whatever that analogy means, fly to you.
I mean, I think it has to do with, that's tough, because it depends. I mean, I don't know if the student does have power in that, but I think in the context of this office, like this could appear on students more easily if some of the barriers to accommodations were taken down. And also the purpose of the office was potentially changed, because if the purpose is to be in compliance with the law, this isn't gonna happen, because that's not empowering for anyone and never has been historically. And so if the purpose of this office is to take down barriers, help students break down these barriers that have been placed in their way of success, then this flag can happen more readily, because that gives students power to, when they say what they need, they are more often granted what they need, not what they just want, but like what they need. And so I think it starts with changing that, because the students are already asking for what they need, but they're being denied more often than maybe is necessary. Or they're being told one thing and a different thing is happening. And so I think in this context, the students are already trying to do this and get this, but there's like stuff in their way so that they can't. So they're already trying to do this, but they aren't getting it yet.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm hearing you speak the truth. I'm hearing you speak the truth. We will continue this. I'm going to pause right here.